Okay, recording pending. I don't know what that means. Okay.
Okay.
There we go. It says you are recording this meeting. Be sure to let everyone know that they are being recorded. All right. As of now, you are all being recorded. So maybe we can get started now. I can just give a quick introduction for Patty. So thank you both for joining us this morning. It's great to have you. We are here today to talk about crime prevention through environmental design, and we are talking about that because it is the theme and the key component of our capital improvement budgeting process this year. So our capital improvement budget process is split into 2 years. The first year that happens in the odd numbered years is for department projects. So that's when city departments will pull together requests for funding, and the Capital Improvement Budget Committee will hear those and make recommendations to the mayor about specifically department ideas that come directly from departments. And then the other year, this year, and even number years, there is a pot of funding in the capital improvement budget, and it's $1 million over 2 years that is specifically set aside for projects that come directly from the community. And so that can be from residents, from district councils, from business owners, people in our St. Paul community. You know, as I mentioned this year, we are looking for projects from that group that are specifically related to crime prevention through environmental design. And that's a concept that I think some are familiar with, but not everybody. So we wanted to have Patty available to do a few presentations about what that means and sort of what it looks like in the city. Patty is here with us from the St. Paul Police Department. Thank you, Patty. And I will turn it over to you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Patty Lammers. I am a crime prevention specialist with the St. Paul Police Department. I am also a CPTED certified design professional. So I do the classes because I've spent 60 plus hours in specialized training specifically just around the idea of CPTED. So what is CPTED? It stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design, and it's a multidisciplinary approach of crime prevention that uses the way that we look at our built environment and how do we make that built environment safer. It's a concept that came out in the 70s and that has developed further as we go on. So why would we want CPTED? It offers the opportunity to reduce crime. It reduces fear of crime. It encourages social interaction, and it improves quality of life. So why commit CIB funding to this? Public space is crucial to improve quality of life. Well-designed areas encourage neighborhood connections and cohesion, and improved safety perceptions encourage residents to engage with their public spaces and within their neighborhoods. There are 4 principles that we look at when we look at CPTED. It's natural surveillance, it's access control, it's territorial reinforcement, and it's maintenance. So what's natural surveillance? It's the placement of physical features, activities, and people in such ways as to maximize visibility in our community. So it's really about how do we get more eyes on the street? How do we get more eyes on places we want people to be? So again, eyes on the street, it can involve appropriate and uniform lighting, low or see-through fencing and shrubs, removal of design areas that offer areas of concealment, such as blind corners, overgrown trees, walls that may block ways of looking into spaces. So when we look at landscaping, the things we want to think about is the height of things. So bushes should be no more than 3 feet high. Tree branches should be no lower than 6 feet. And evergreen trees should be trimmed 3 feet from the bottom. And that's so that we can see anyone that might be trying to conceal themselves either below a tree or behind a tree. Lighting is crucial when we're talking about natural surveillance. Minnesota, it's dark by 5 o'clock in the winter, so it's crucial for us here. Lighting should be a cool white lighting. So the lighting that's super yellow isn't good, and the lighting that's too blue isn't good. Any of us that have been blinded by those blue headlights knows what that's like. It's too harsh on our eyes. Lighting needs to be directed downward. The old globe lightings are a poor example of how we had light intrusion and how lighting would escape and just waste energy. Lighting should be uniform and allow for someone to be identified 20 feet away. So this is a great example here in this picture where we see someone biking or walking this area can easily see well ahead of them in the evening hours. Natural surveillance also has a subcategory of mechanical surveillance. So sometimes there are existing spaces and buildings where it's not practical to redesign the space. And that's where we would look at cameras, mirrors, or CCTV in its place to help augment what would normally be under natural surveillance. Access control is the second area, and that's how we guide people through spaces. It's why we have sidewalks. It's why we have fencing. It's really how we get people from one space to another and keep them in areas where we want them to be and not in areas where we don't want them to be. So it's things like having decorated entrances to areas. So it's accentuating those areas and those elements using landscaping and lighting to let people know where they should be going, where they should be entering a space. It's fencing or landscaping that would discourage trespassing in vulnerable areas of a property. The third element is territorial reinforcement. It creates a clear delineation of space and separates your space from non-legitimate users or folks we don't want in those spaces. It's why neighbors put up fences. It's why we will define a park space often. So how does that look? You're going to see public space, and that's areas we want people to be. Then you get into what we call semi-public, which is like pedestrian space, your front sidewalk in front of your home. Semi-private is going to be sidewalks to your home, and then private is actually any adjoining park properties to a public space. So the area of your home next to a park, or if you're out on the city street, it's where your porch begins, is where private space begins, but your front yard is considered semi-public space. So our goal with that is to define space transitions, show ownership of a space, signage on how to enter a public space. But it can be things on your block, such as things identifying your neighborhood or your block club for your individual block. Territorial reinforcement is about having that clear transition between public and private spaces. So having those signage up that says you're entering park space. So does CPTED work in public spaces, and how does it work? CPTED was designed to create safe spaces for residential, commercial, and public spaces. It can be utilized in almost any setting. And the principles don't change across those settings. So the principles stay the same. It's just how we implement those principles in different spaces. So when we're looking at natural surveillance, if we're looking at a park space, we're looking at locating parking lots, picnic facilities, and other activities used at night near streets, or locating activities that are similar to each other, clustered together, allowing for those activities to be seen easily from outside of the park. So looking at things like park staff being able to see the park, or other users being able to see the park. So if you're driving by, you're going to be able to see the activities that are taking place in that park space, and you're going to be able to get good visuals of that. So when we talk about that, we're talking about clustering comparable activities to bring eyes together. So picnics next to play areas, benches between those areas so that people can see what's taking place. So a parent could be picnicking while watching their child play. So creating those air spaces like that, and then limiting spaces where people may want to do other activities that aren't congruent with the park. So we want people to be able to look and see if there's a space that's being underutilized, developing that space so that that area now has better utilization, so that there are more people using an underutilized area of a park space. So natural surveillance create more public gathering locations. So it's about bringing people together. So when we look at it for park spaces, we want to consider potentially replacing trees that may be located in bad areas. Replace areas with lower shrubs. Replace shrubs that are too tall or that are overgrown. So looking at how the park has been maintained. Remove landscaping that is located poorly. So you'll get areas where you may have trees that are blocking views into the park. There are some areas where we may want to consider more hostile vegetarian, so hostile vegetation. So areas where we see people hanging out that we may not necessarily be a great area for people to hang out. We may want to look at things like rose bushes. So creating space that's beautiful, but an area that's going to discourage people from being in that space. Adding windows to some of our existing park buildings. So some of our park buildings are older. So the older park building you see there is Duluth and Case. As you can see, it was designed a few decades ago now, and they have very small windows. So you see very tiny opportunities to actually overlook their play space. And then we have the lovely design that is the new Frogtown Community Center. As you can see, they have multiple levels of windows out onto the spaces. So they have windows both overlooking their parking lot. They have windows on the side that overlooks their play spaces, and they have windows on the side that overlooks all of their fields. So they have excellent natural surveillance both inside and outside of the building that allows for more people to see what's going on and what's happening, where some of our older buildings don't have those opportunities. So if you're near one of those older buildings, that's what we want to see people taking a look at, is maybe there's some opportunity to make some small improvements. Lighting is crucial, as we know. So ensuring that all walkways are well lit around our spaces. And this includes both parkways, this includes biking areas, hiking areas, and even our public streets. Lighting gathering spaces that can be used at night. So you may have field spaces that are used in the evening, such as football fields, some of our soccer fields, or lighting our play activity areas if we want them used at night. So I wanted to give you some examples of how that works in real life. And this is a project that was actually funded in the last round of the CIB that was for the community CPTED portion. And so we had Central Village Park, and it had lighting only at its primary play areas, but the lighting leading into the park spaces was really underlit. And so residents were concerned because it was attracting criminal activity. It was attracting people hanging out in the park at hours that they didn't want them hanging out in the park and no one could see them. So there was public drinking going on. And so they put forward a proposal to increase the lighting in the space. And the lighting was added along the walkways going into the park, and there are multiple walkways that go into the park. And now residents who live in and around Central Village can see better what's happening at the park at night, and they can notice if there are things that are going wrong in the park in the evening, and have a better opportunity to report those concerns. Other lighting improvements we saw from the last round of CIB, Roy Wilkins Park, which is formerly Lewis Park, got upgrade lighting. Some regular streets got upgraded lighting that had some of the older lighting. So the area of Rice and Winnipeg and the area of Charles between McCubbin and Arundel were given upgraded lighting. And you can see it works out to be about one additional light per street, but it makes a valuable difference. Those lights were also the old sodium lighting, which was the more yellow lighting. Their lighting has now been upgraded to the whiter LED lighting, and it's made a tremendous difference for the neighbors in and around those areas. Those areas were selected because of the higher incidence of gunfire in those areas. And now we'll look to see what type of effect it has over the next year, year and a half, looking at the crime stats for those areas. But they were just installed just over the fall, so we haven't been able to see any long-term differences yet. And then cameras do not need to be in all parks and all public spaces, but some of our larger parks have benefited from cameras. So Como Park, Phelan Park, places like that that are larger regional areas that draw people from all over the city can benefit from camera coverage when we simply don't have enough natural surveillance in an area such as the parking lots where we will see a higher incidence of potential car break-ins. Access control. So directing people where we want them to be, accentuating our entries so that they're clear where traffic and pedestrians should be. So how do we design those spaces? Walkways should lead to entries and exits from the park. This is Iris Park. You can see they have entries that all go flowing right to the central focal point, which is the fountain there. So add landscaping or fencing to deter people from entering areas where they should not be or they might be dangerous. So fencing along trail areas where people may fall off of an area and be injured. Just adding even small fencing, as you can see there, the area with the bench, that's a garden area. So we don't want people walking through the garden, but we do want them on those sidewalks and enjoying those benches. So even the smallest mental cue for people of seeing a small fence lets them know we don't want you walking across the grass there. Install gates at entries that need to be a higher level of control. So there may be parts of a park that you want to shut down in the evening altogether. So installing gates in those areas to keep people out altogether is one option. Other parts of access control, again, are about getting people where we want them to be. So do you have a larger park that needs more signage? It has multiple areas where people could be and they need to be directed. So you see a sample here of Como where you see the signage for the Zoo Conservatory and the carousel. You also see down by the Great River Passage, letting people know where they are within a park space or within a green space and how they travel to other parts of that park or green spaces. This works really well, this type of signage, in some more of our natural parks. So things like Crosby Park benefits significantly from signage like this, or Bruce Vento Nature. Posting park rules and park hours. So letting people know what the expectations are immediately. Let them know the park's open from dusk to dawn. The park has this many play spaces, or these are the ages that can play on this section of the park or in this section of the park, or if there's an area dedicated for pets. So our project spotlight for this is actually Lewis Park and Roy Wilkins is now Roy Wilkins. They are getting new signage this spring that will be added to that park to better emphasize what the park's name is, to give people an idea of where we want them to enter the park. And then Lighton Park is a North End project. This little park has been around for many, many years, and it's going to receive new fencing. The fencing that's there has been a little bit beat up over the years because it's been there a pretty long time, and they're going to get that refreshed to give that little tiny neighborhood park just a little better look and encourage more people to be out and use that space. So territorial reinforcement. Entry signs. All parks should have marked entries so people know where they are entering public space. Define transitions between public and private property using fencing or landscaping. Encourage projects that personalize park space and show community ownership. So you see the example here where the neighborhood group has gotten together and actually painted the basketball court with bright colors. They've made it look really inviting for kids. So those are things you can consider in your park spaces. Painting murals in your park spaces, adding decorative benching to the areas. So not just seating, but seating that may be artistic, that represents and reflects your community. When we look at our intersections and our sidewalks, lighting again should be uniform and allow someone to be from 20 feet away. Landscaping should be kept to 3 feet or below. So here we have a beautiful median. We've got lower landscaping so people can still see through it, but it lets people know that that median is cared for and that there's ownership of that median from the community. Signage should be located to not obstruct drivers or pedestrian views. Cameras could be considered for some of the higher incident intersections. Crosswalks, they can be marked to guide people across safely and cue drivers. Lighted crosswalks at larger intersections can alert drivers at night or in poor weather. We know many of our crosswalks here in St. Paul are not necessarily the best marked. So this is areas where we could look at better marked crosswalks, areas where we may want to consider things like neck downs, where we do bump outs so that you could reduce speed in areas is another option for these areas, but really looking at ways to make sure pedestrians are seen so that we don't see folks particularly getting hit at night or in bad weather. They can be designed to slow traffic as well as including painted or raised intersections where you may see a busier intersection. Will they actually raise that portion of the intersection so pedestrians are easier to view and see? Residents can create a sense of ownership with the projects. So paint the pavement, we actually had a couple installed this fall. Adding benches to your neighborhood block, adding community street signs. Como, South Como neighborhood is great. They have these wonderful obelisks that go up that are mosaics that have their street names on them. So things like that that enhance your community, that show ownership of your community. Decorative trash receptacles out in your areas. So some examples. Occasionally we'll have these rare areas where, for whatever reason, sidewalk was not connected. So this last round at Seal High Rise, there was about a 20-foot length of sidewalk that had never been connected. So people were having to cross the street and come back to the other sidewalk. So this created and filled in that gap. So if you've got spaces like that around the city, I have that on my own block where I live on a corner, and the block that I'm on, we have sidewalk on the side of my home, but the block going to the south of me did not want sidewalk. And so that area has no sidewalk. So filling in some of those gaps so that we have good pedestrian friendly neighborhoods so that we can all be out having those eyes on the street, engaging with our neighbors. One other example, and this is something that we do very rarely, are speed bumps. And these are something we really only consider on very residential streets and only in very rare circumstances. So we did add some at Charles and Rice, but it's because that block was having a really significant cluster of criminal activity just in that one block area where we had cars speeding out for drug dealers or speeding out for gunshots. And so that's why we, in this rare instance, added speed humps. But there are better options for it. If you're on like an arterial, we would rather look at bump outs. We would rather look at better marking crosswalks, lighting crosswalks, rather than going to speed bump. Are there questions?
Yes, I have a question. Mm-hmm. I actually have a statement and kind of a question. Okay. I don't know if these need to be reported because they're about St. Paul downtown specifically, and I don't know if that would be of interest to everyone. Just one thing, I have, I'm trying to get a feel for your project and the kind of things you fund. Yep. And one of the problems I think we have in downtown is that we have so many groups trying to do good work, public and private and all kinds, but not in a coordinated way. So for example, you put a bike lane somewhere, you have an immediate impact on something else. And it's not a coordinated planning. So I have heard rumors that there is a proposal being put forward for some of the funding from COVID to look at a mobility plan for downtown, which looks at priorities at traffic and bike traffic and flow and visitor traffic. I think we need that because I think even the smaller projects that some of these are, they contribute and sometimes they create unintended consequences. So I'm just asking if all of you, when you hear about this project, if you could support it, I think it would be great. Number two, downtown St. Paul, there is no public-private space. It's all public when you're outside.
Absolutely.
Whether you're an owner, a renter, whether you're unsheltered, whether you're a dog, whether you're a delivery truck, I mean, we're all on top of each other. And we're not just on top of each other at street levels and in parks, but also in the skyways. So we need to look at an integration of those systems. And some of our, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, some of our worst surveillance is done in the skyways because with the public-private partnership to do that, it's the responsibility of each business and it's not coordinated and it's kind of like whack-a-mole and it's piecemeal. And so I would love to bring forward a project to you guys to put surveillance and wayfinding in the skyway, but I don't even know if that fits with your mission. Third point, and then I have two more and I'll go really quick. Third point, one of the areas of conflict, and it's going to sound really silly, but it's really important. A lot of us that live downtown have dogs. They contribute to our quality of life. We are getting more and more residents. Downtown St. Paul is becoming a residential center, and we're going to get more people and we're going to get more dogs. And we do not have enough dog parks. We do not have enough making it easy for people to be good owners and pick up after their dogs. And that needs to be a piece because that creates a lot of unsafe feeling, a lot of unhappy people and dogs in gardens in Mears Park. And that I'm not even going to go on with that. So I think we need to consider who is here We have residents, we have visitors, we want it to look nice. We have employees who want to go out and enjoy their lunch outside. We need to think about all of those populations and that they're all crammed in. And then the last one, I know maybe beyond your scope, but we need some kind of safe, clean, public restroom facilities. It's absolutely critical. And not everyone can predict, not everybody lives downtown, not everybody has a hotel room downtown. We need this. Traveling internationally, many communities handle this and do this well. I think we could do it, but somebody's got to take it on. So that's me.
Okay, thank you. I think many of the things you talked about could fit in with these things. So wayfinding through the Skyway system, that's actually been brought up a few times. Things like public restrooms do fall under CPTED. So those are all things, identifying potentially another space for a dog park or an area for people to walk their dogs, installing decorative canisters for poop dropping and picking up bags. All of that could potentially fall under these projects.
Cool. That's wonderful. Will you tell us how we can put those projects forward and what level of detail you need?
An excellent segue. I can take it from there. So right now, where we are in the process is we have our idea platform open. So that's a website that you can go and tell all your friends and neighbors to go to, where you can submit your idea. And at this point, it's just sort of a high level. We're just looking for the overall idea of what you'd like to propose, and then once we receive those ideas, we will have city staff review them for eligibility. So the eligibility things that we're looking for are, number one, are they on city property? Because we have to be able to, we have to own the property to be able to do something on it. Two, are they a capital project? We get a lot of requests for things that are, you know, we want additional staff in the Parks Department, or we would like a policy change. And while that's all really great information, and we do take it in and we send it to the people that it relates to in the city, it's not something that we can fund with our capital dollars. So it has to be physical infrastructure. And then the third is just related to the money that we're using to fund this, and it's bond funded, so it has to have a useful life of 10 or more years. Most of the time that's not a problem. You know, if you build a new park or a park bench, or you know, you put in new lighting, it lasts for more than 10 years, but something to think about there in terms of eligibility. So once everybody submits the ideas on the idea platform, and I will put that, I'll put that link in the chat here so everybody has it, but it's engagestpaul.org/CIB 2022. So once we get ideas from that platform, we'll review those for eligibility, and all of the ideas that are eligible based on those three criteria I mentioned before will be invited to submit a longer application, and that'll just go into more detail and have a little bit and just more of the background on the project and what you envision for it. Those ideas will then be reviewed by, oh, thank you, Patty. Those ideas will then be reviewed by the CIB committee, and they will make recommendations to the mayor by June 30th. There'll be a couple more points of engagement along the way. So once we get applications, those will be posted online and for the community to review them. And then there'll also be a public polling function also online. So once you reviewed them, you can give your feedback there on the website. There will also be a public hearing where anybody can come and tell the CIB committee what they think about the projects that are being proposed. And then if you do have a project that you're submitting, you will be offered the opportunity to present that project to the CIB committee. And, you know, that can just be, you know, you can just come and talk about it, or you can do a short PowerPoint. It's pretty flexible there. So we're really hoping that people who submit applications are interested in sharing more about that with the CIB committee. So the big timing piece here is that we are all sort of working towards this goal of submitting recommendations from the CIB committee to the mayor by June 30th. Once the mayor has them, he will consider he'll consider the recommendations from the CIB committee, make changes if he would like to, and then include that in his proposed budget for 2023. And then once he proposes the budget, it's, similar to the regular budget process. The city council will take it up, review all of the things that the mayor has included, and make changes themselves. And then the budget will be adopted in December. Any more questions about the process or how to submit ideas or anything?
Just a question. This is for things that last. You couldn't include any training. I know you can't do staffing, but could you do a training funding?
Right. This has to be for things that last. So it has to be physical, something physical, some piece of infrastructure. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and we really hope to see your ideas come through on the Engage St. Paul site. Please reach out to either me or Patty if you have any questions going forward. You can use that CIB email address that you used to RSVP for this, and I will also put my email address in the chat as well, in case you would like to contact me directly.
I just want to thank you guys for doing this. I think engaging is really important. I am disappointed you didn't have as big a turnout, but we've got to work really hard to get the word out. And I will share this with the Capitol Council. I'll share it with the people that live in my building, with people that live in other buildings that I know, because I just think it's critical for you to hear as much from people, because I care about dog parks and public bathrooms. Other people are going to care about other things, but we have lots and lots of needs.
And we do have one additional workshop as well, Judy, that you can help spread the word about. That is coming up on the 17th, and that's an evening one at 6 p.m.
At 6, yes. I couldn't go to that one, so I came to the morning one. So I will share that as well. That's a good reminder.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
All right. Yeah, thanks everybody.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.